Hi guys, my name is Trinity, and if you're here to talk about books. Today, we will be talking about, is Book of the Month worth it? So, I have had Book of the Month for over a year now. And if you guys don't know, it's a monthly subscription. I believe it's like $14.99 a month. Don't quote me on that, because I know some of the subscription boxes have raised their prices, but you get a hardback book of your choosing. There's 5 to 7 selections, and you pick what you get. Now, part of this is they curate what they believe are going to be the big releases coming up, what they believe will attract the most readers. So if you are, like me, someone who reads outside of the box, someone who doesn't always love the popular books, this could be something that you want to be aware of. These are going to be popular books. These are going to be books that appeal to the most amount of people. And that does mean that fantasy is almost never featured. I say almost never. I will say that since I have had it, I have picked up a few fantasy releases from them, and they have glommed onto a few of the big fantasy releases, such as Amina Al-Sarafi by Shannon Chakraborty. They had the Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. Now, I purchased these books previous to Book of the Month actually offering them, so I did not get them from Book of the Month, but I do own those books. And if you guys have seen previous videos of mine, you will know I tend to want to focus on the Book of the Month books that I've received. That way I know what to tell you guys about them and if you guys should pick them up. I am not great about always reading what I get when I get it though. Like, I can put it off for a couple of months, and that's just me. I don't like jumping on bandwagons and things like that. So if I'm part of the hype, it will be a later part of the hype. But let's go ahead and go through what I have received and what I've read. So of the books I have read, 13 of them were loved, 9 of them were liked, and 6 of them I have been highly disappointed in. And I'll go ahead and go through the titles with you so you guys can see what I've actually got and read. So the first one would be The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. You guys know I read that 3 times last year. 3 times. Couldn't get enough of it. Absolutely loved it. The Hacienda by Isabel Canas. Really loved that one. It's a mix of Mexican Gothic and Rebecca. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Book of Night I did like. I am in the minority for Book of Night, but I've always liked Holly Black's writing, and this was fairly typical of Holly Black and her writing style, the type of character she likes to write about and stuff like that. So I can't say it was my favorite book I've ever read, but I did like it. Again, I'm in the minority of liking Upgrade by Blake Crouch. It was a very different thing for him to write. It was more character driven than his other books were, and I actually liked the characters. So I think the criticisms that he had taken to heart were apparent in this book, and I think a lot of people who read Blake Crouch were like, no, that's not what we wanted. We wanted some more of the same, which all of his books are the same. So, except for Upgrade. And I liked the deviation from form. Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. I did also really enjoy this one. Sign Here by Claudia Lux. That's a recent read of mine, so I did enjoy that one. It was one of my 5 stars for the year, and probably one of my favorite books that I've read this year, but it was just fun. It was a really funny, darkly funny, let me point that out, darkly funny, humorous story with a lot of heart. So I really enjoyed it. Now, of the ones I have liked, No Exit by Taylor Adams. I thought it was a good thriller. I thought there was nothing really wrong with it. It just didn't have the oomph I expect from a really hard-hitting thriller, and I know a lot of people would disagree with me, because if you ask, there's a lot of people who this is their favorite thriller. I do want to see the movie, but it's not one I can watch with my kiddo, so Fate of the Fallen. Again, I'm in the minority. I liked this one. I thought it was fun. I don't think that this is going to have wide appeal like the rest of Book of the Month's books tend to be. So I'm also skipping over some of the ones that I added myself. So you can add books to your shelf that were once Book of the Month books. These are the ones I have received over the last year or so. The Lost Apothecary, I liked this one. I'm not a big fan of dual timelines, so there was no way for this to be a hard love for me. And I wanted the story from the past. I didn't care about the one that was set in the present, and so Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. Again, I liked it. Did it blow me away? No. Most of the thrillers that I get from Book of the Month land at a 3.5 or a 4. Doesn't mean I don't like them. It's not going to be anything like The Martyr. I'm not going to give it the same ranking as that. Keeper of Night by Kylie Lee Baker. I liked this one. It was I didn't love it because the ending had some tropes that I didn't like, and the ending also got repetitive. So 2 things that are personal to my taste that just annoyed me. So I liked it though. It was pretty good. A History of Wild Places. Now this is one of the fantasy that I did receive that I thought it was pretty predictable, pretty average, but I liked it. I don't think there was anything wrong with it. So, I mean, that is what it is. The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. Now, I really enjoyed this one. This has probably been my favorite mystery that I got from Book of the Month. And I do have more Lucy Foley to read, but again, I liked it. Kayeki. Loved this one. I did say I liked it though, not loved, because I do not think that it hits the level of Circe or Sister Song, but it's in the same vein. And I do think it's pretty on par with The Witch's Heart, if you've read that. Very good books. Just Circe and Sister Song kind of are a little bit elevated to me. So I can't give Kayeke or The Witch's Heart a 5-star, having read Circe and Sister Song. Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. I did say I liked this. That was before I changed my mind. I am going to say I loved this. Oh, this dog. Because I realized that Ninth House was kind of the setup for Hellbent, for like what we were going to be getting via this story. And it really, it took a moment for it to sink in that that's what the 2 books were. Ninth House was the setup. Hellbent was where the meat of the story started. And I'm okay with that because I liked both books. Book 1 didn't feel like a setup until I read Hellbent. Now, let's talk about the ones I have got from Book of the Month that were disappointments, because they have turned out to be some of my biggest disappointments of the years that I read them. And oh man. So The Ex-Hex. I did not like this book. I do see that it has appeal to other readers. I actually gave this to my niece because I was like, hey, you'll probably like this one. Now, the reasons I don't like it are surface level characters, surface level magic. It was fun, but I have read a lot of fantasy romance, and this just did not hit. Not for me. I thought that the enemies to lovers trope that it had in it was pretty weak, but like I said, I can see why this has wide-ranging appeal. It just didn't work for me. The next one. You guys have probably recently seen me talk about this book, so I won't get into too much detail, but Darling Girl. Oh, I did not like that one at all. I did not like that one at all. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. This one, I actually DNF'd because I don't really like slice of life stories, and that's all this was. Do I get why it has such wide-ranging appeal? Yes, I do. I do think the story is fairly good, and I do think the setup of it is fairly good. It's just not for me. And so, I mean, it won Book of the Year all over the place last year. So I am the outlier here. I am the weird one who just happened to not like it. And then Killers of a Certain Age. This is where I feel like me and Book of the Month might have to break up. Sometimes I have this in my head every once in a while. They have a tendency to pick things that are cheesy, like The Ex-Hex, like Darling Girl, like The Cloisters, which we haven't got there yet. Killers of a Certain Age. When I run into these books, I do not like them. There's no appeal for me in these books. Killers of a Certain Age was very cheesy. And like I said before, I get why this one has wide range appeal. It's older characters who have been assassins, who are trying to survive an assassination attempt on themselves. So, you know, it's wild. It's a wild ride. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that appeal to. I'm not a big fan of like Kings of the Wild. So, you know, I think this has an audience. I'm just not that audience. And then, like I said, The Cloisters, it's dark academia. The reason that I picked it up was because on Book of the Month, it's labeled Gothic Thriller. I do think that Book of the Month has a problem labeling things Gothic when they're not Gothic. So be aware. Also, trigger warnings. Book of the Month does have them, does have content warnings and trigger warnings. With Darling Girl and The Cloisters, they were missing. And so when you go into it expecting one thing and get something completely different, that is Book of the Month's fault. That is Book of the Month's fault for not being upfront about what is actually in the book. What is the content of this story? The writing retreat, I got about 30 pages into it before I DNF'd it, because I am not looking for books that talk about the problems that we are currently facing. My desire to read, escapism. Look at the books that are on the shelf. I want to escape what the problems of the world currently are. And I have no interest in reading about it. I already have to watch the news. I mean, I want to watch the news, but like, I have discussions about this with my husband, with my friends, and I believe these things need to be discussed face to face. It was actually really funny because I was playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Socrates is a character in it, and he says, "Don't write my words down because I can't defend them." And, you know, I had known this was something he actually said, but like, books can't defend their stance. And so that's what he was talking about. And I kind of agree, but I don't want to read something like that either, because I can't argue with the book. And I can't, you know, I feel like I'm being preached at, I guess is the point that I'm trying to get across. I don't like to be preached at. Don't tell me what to believe. I will believe what I want to believe, even if I agree with you. I don't want to be preached at. So I had to DNF that one. It was one of those. It was one of those. Now, I do still have quite a few left to read, and we'll go through those real quick so you guys can see what I've actually purchased. But my most recent purchase was Camp Zero by Michelle Min Sterling, and this is a dystopian, so I was very excited to see that being offered, because the last dystopian that they offered, or I guess, yeah, I'd consider it dystopian, was The Space Between Worlds, which I really loved. And that was my introduction into sci-fi. Like, I won't say that I'd never read a sci-fi before, because obviously I'm a fan of Star Wars, and, you know, I play Mass Effect. I've read all of the books for Mass Effect. Well, most of the books for Mass Effect. And I know I like sci-fi, but it didn't dawn on me until like a couple years ago that I actually like sci-fi. And I've read a ton since then. But The Space Between Worlds, I really loved. And so I was really excited to see another dystopian and Camp Zero. And I'm very excited to get to it. I'm also very excited to get to Queen of Thieves by B.Z. Marsh. This is post-World War II thieving women in London, and it just sounds like it's going to be a ton of fun. Now, I have also purchased A River Enchanted and its sequel, A Fire Endless, by Rebecca Ross. I have yet to read them. It's staring at me on my TBR cart, guys. It's like, why haven't you read me yet? I don't know. To be perfectly honest, I don't know. It is one that is appealing to me. It's one I've put on TBRs like 1,000 times, it seems. But when I sit down to read, I don't know. I don't know why I haven't read it yet. That's all I can say. The Circus Train, I actually just had to send back the audio for it because I was getting bogged down. I had like all of my Libby holds. They were coming at me left and right. And so they all came at once. I had Babel, I'm confessing it here, and I sent that back too, because they all came at once and I only get 7 days. So if I go to put them on hold, which I still haven't got, Al Sarafi back. So, and I said deliver 2 days later, and it's been 2 weeks. So yeah, we'll see. The Wilder Women is actually on my 23 books that I want to read in 2023. Just haven't got there yet. Foul Lady Fortune by Chloe Gong. I've been very excited to get to that because I really liked These Violent Delights Are Violent Ends, that duology. And I want to read something else from her. And so I haven't put it off, other than I haven't been really drawn to YA lately, but still excited for it. Still excited for it. So when I'm going for a YA, that's probably going to be one that I go for. The Lies I Tell and The Collective are two mysteries which I will probably put them on hold whenever I go to do my next round of Libby holds, because I do like sprinkling mystery thrillers in throughout my reading throughout the year, kind of as a break to all of the fantasy I read. I still have Ariadne, haven't read that. And then I have 2 by Simone St. James, The Sundown Motel and The Broken Girls. Now, I've heard very good things about Simone St. James, so I am going to try and squeeze one of these books in very soon. I might try and see if it'll fit maybe the Force Read With You, one of those prompts. I don't know if it will, because I have fulfilled most of those prompts within a video that I recently did. Maybe someone will read it and I can steal it. Oh no, I have one for that. Totally forgot. I'll update that later. But yeah, so these are the books that I have received from Book of the Month. If any of them sound appealing, then I say go for it. The only reason I have ever considered canceling my Book of the Month, like I said, is because I read like 3 or 4 stinkers back to back. However, if we go by stats, I generally tend to like the books that are offered from Book of the Month. And like I said, the fantasy that's usually offered, I don't get because I've purchased them previous to Book of the Month releasing them. So that is another thing to be aware of. Maybe don't be so quick to jump the gun because you can get it for $14.99 if you get it through Libby, or if you add it on, they're like $11.99. So that is kind of my overview of what my experience has been with Book of the Month. And I'm going to leave the question up to you. Do you think it's worth it? If any of that sounds appealing, then maybe you should look into it, because like I said, hardback new releases for $14.99, I do believe, and $11.99 add-ons. These are all hardback books. They are very nice quality. You guys can see here. And one of the really fun things about Book of the Month is that your hardcover has an imprinted date right there. So it says November 2022. They also have them on the back here on the cover, November 2022. So I do think that I will keep my Book of the Month, even though I've threatened to break up with it a couple times recently. But that's it for me today. Like, subscribe, do all the fun things, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!